Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. We love to really get into some fascinating books, and today we're going to be talking about The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel.
Oh yeah, this is a fun one. I really enjoyed this book.
So this book, it's not like your typical kind of like how-to financial advice book.
Yeah.
It's more about the mindset and the stories that people tell themselves about money.
Right. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. You've got stories about people like Ronald Reed, who was a janitor
Yeah.
and ended up amassing this huge fortune.
Billions of dollars.
Right. Millions of dollars.
Mm.
And then you've got like Richard Fuscone, who was this Wall Street hotshot who ended up bankrupt.
Yeah, and it kind of shows you right off the bat, like, being smart about money isn't always about, having the highest IQ or the best education.
Yeah, it's not about being smart, it's about behavior. That's a big takeaway from this book.
Absolutely. And Housel really dives into that. He says even really intelligent people can make terrible financial decisions if they don't understand how their emotions are driving their choices.
And he uses these stories like Ronald Reed and Richard Fuscone as examples, to really show that even brilliant minds can really stumble.
So the big question then is, how do our emotions and our experiences really shape those money decisions?
Well, it's interesting because Housel talks about how our upbringing and our personal history with money can really kind of create this lens through which we see the world.
Oh, yeah.
He gives an example like people who were born in the 1950s versus those born in the 1970s.
Okay.
They had completely different experiences with the stock market.
Yeah, for sure.
And that shaped their whole outlook on risk and reward.
Yeah, totally. I mean, think about it. Like, if you grew up, during a time when the market wasn't doing so well,
Yeah.
you're probably going to be more risk averse.
Right. And then on the other hand, if you saw the market booming, you might be more likely to take chances.
Yeah, absolutely. So even when we're looking at the same financial facts, our personal histories can lead us to very different conclusions and choices.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be aware of those biases, those kind of preconceived notions that we bring to the table.
And it really highlights why people make decisions that might seem irrational from the outside.
Absolutely.
Like someone who's lived through really tough financial times, they might be more likely to buy lottery tickets even though the odds are stacked against them.
Right. Because for them, it represents hope. It represents this chance at a life that they wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah, it makes sense when you think about it from their perspective.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that Housel really dives into is this concept of enough.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember the story about John Bogle?
Oh, yes. John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard.
Yes, and Kurt Vonnegut. They're at this party, right? And they run into this billionaire hedge fund manager.
Yeah.
And you would think this guy would have it all. He's got billions of dollars, right?
You think he'd be set.
But he tells them he still doesn't feel like he has enough.
It's so interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because it shows that enough isn't just about a dollar figure.
Yeah.
It's this feeling of contentment. It's about being in control of your time, having the freedom to do what you want.
It's about feeling fulfilled.
Yeah. And this billionaire, maybe he didn't have those things, even with all of his wealth.
It makes you wonder what really matters.
It does. It makes you question, like, what are we all striving for? What does success actually look like?
And that's a question that a lot of us grapple with, I think. It's easy to get caught up in that chase for more, without stopping to consider what truly makes us happy.
I think that's one of the most powerful takeaways from this book.
Absolutely. Now, on the flip side of that, Housel doesn't shy away from the dangers of constantly chasing more.
Yeah.
He talks about people like Rajat Gupta and Bernie Madoff.
Uh-huh.
These were incredibly successful people in their fields, right?
They were.
But they risked it all for even more wealth.
And ultimately faced some pretty serious consequences.
Yeah, it's almost like they had enough by most standards, but that desire for more led to their downfall.
It really makes you think about where that line is. When does ambition become destructive?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it brings us right back to that psychology of money.
Right back to that.
Sometimes our emotions around wealth can really cloud our judgment and lead us to make decisions that don't make sense from a logical standpoint.
I think that's a perfect place to leave it for today.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we're really starting to get into the nitty-gritty of this. We're starting to see how these emotional and psychological factors can really impact our relationship with money.
And we're just getting started. We've got so much more to unpack from the psychology of money. So make sure you join us for the next part of this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more insights from Morgan Housel.
See you then.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the psychology of money.
So we've been talking about all these fascinating ideas from Morgan Housel's book and, how our emotions and experiences really shape our financial decisions. But now I'm really curious to get into risk, Like how do we navigate those ups and downs in the market?
Well, Housel actually dives deep into the concept of risk, but it goes beyond just the numbers and spreadsheets and, all that stuff.
Okay.
It's about how we perceive risk, how we deal with uncertainty,
Yeah.
and even our emotional responses to, setbacks.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because those things play a huge role in our overall financial well-being.
So it's not just about crunching numbers and making these perfectly rational decisions.
Not at all. In fact, he uses the story of Jesse Livermore.
Okay.
Do you remember him?
I don't think so.
He was this legendary stock trader from way back in the early 1900s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he made a fortune during the 1929 market crash by shorting the market.
Yeah.
Basically betting that prices would go down.
Oh, wow. That's risky.
It is risky.
Did it pay off for him?
It did. Big time. It's like a classic example of someone who really understood risk and was able to capitalize on it. But here's the thing. It's also a cautionary tale.
Uh-oh.
Because even though he achieved this incredible success,
he
eventually lost it all. It's like he mastered the game, but he couldn't resist pushing his luck too far.
That's a good reminder that, even when you're on top, things can change really quickly.
Yeah. And to further illustrate that point, he contrasts Livermore with this guy named Abraham Germansky.
Okay.
He was a real estate developer who also made a fortune during the roaring 20s, but the crash in 29 completely wiped him out.
Oh, wow.
Some people believe that it was so devastating that he actually took his own life.
Oh, gosh, that's awful. It just shows you how unpredictable things can be.
Absolutely. These stories really highlight how important it is to manage risk,
For sure.
to not get caught up in the euphoria of winning and to always be prepared for potential downturns.
So how do we protect ourselves from those kinds of devastating losses? What can we learn from these stories?
Well, Housel stresses the importance of having a margin of safety, or what he calls room for error.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we can't predict the future with 100% certainty, and things don't always go as planned.
So having that buffer, a little bit of cushion just in case things go wrong.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And he says that having room for error allows you to endure a wider range of potential outcomes.
Okay.
Think about it. Unexpected expenses, job losses,
Yeah.
market downturns.
Yeah, those happen.
They happen to everyone. And if you have that cushion, you're much more likely to weather those storms and come out okay on the other side.
That makes sense. It's about being prepared for the unexpected, those curveballs that life throws at you.
Exactly. And remember those tail events we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
Well, Housel argues that having room for error is what allows you to stick around long enough to potentially benefit from those, those rare outsized gains that can really make a difference.
Oh, I see. It's like increasing your chances of being in the game when those big opportunities come along.
Exactly. It's not about eliminating risk altogether.
Yeah.
It's about tilting the odds in your favor by making sure you can survive even when things get tough.
Okay. That's a really interesting way to think about it.
And, he also talks about how our emotions can really affect our ability to handle risk. It's one thing to understand it intellectually,
Right.
but it's another thing entirely to actually experience, the emotional roller coaster of the market.
I think we can all relate to that feeling of seeing your investments go up and down and feeling that knot in your stomach.
Totally.
Yeah.
And Housel says spreadsheets can show us, historically how often the stock market declines, but they can't capture that feeling of anxiety you get when your portfolio is taking a hit.
Yeah, there's a big difference between understanding risk and actually living through it. So how do we bridge that gap?
Well, Housel suggests that having that margin of safety, that financial cushion we talked about,
Yeah.
it can really help to kind of smooth out those emotional swings. Because if you know you have a buffer, you're less likely to panic and make impulsive decisions when the market takes a dip, which it inevitably will.
It's like having that safety net gives you the confidence to ride out those storms and stick with your long-term plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it leads to a more balanced approach to risk overall. Housel actually introduces this really interesting idea of a barbelled personality.
A barbelled personality.
Yeah, a barbelled personality. He says that the most successful people are both optimistic about the future and paranoid about what could go wrong.
Okay, so they're kind of living in both worlds at the same time.
Exactly. You need that optimism to fuel your dreams and believe in a better future.
Yeah.
But you also need that healthy dose of paranoia to keep you grounded, to anticipate potential pitfalls and to take steps to protect yourself.
So it's like being excited about going on a road trip,
Yeah.
but also making sure you have a spare tire and a roadside assistance plan, just in case.
I love that analogy. You're prepared for the journey, but you're also aware that things might not always go smoothly.
Yeah, and that makes sense, not just for finances, but for life in general, right?
Absolutely. The mindset that can really serve you well in many areas. And speaking of risk,
Yeah.
Housel also gets into this concept of leverage, which is essentially using borrowed money to potentially amplify your returns.
Yeah, I've heard of leverage, but it always seemed a little bit complicated and maybe even dangerous.
It can be both. Leverage is like a double-edged sword. If things go your way, it can really supercharge your gains. But if things go against you, it can magnify your losses, and that could lead to some serious financial trouble.
So it's like hitting the gas pedal on your investments. You might reach your destination faster,
Yeah.
but you're also increasing your risk of crashing.
That's a great way to put it. And Housel is actually quite cautious about using leverage, especially when it comes to long-term investments like your home or your retirement savings.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He argues that the potential for ruin often outweighs the allure of those magnified gains.
It's a reminder that sometimes the best approach is to play it safe, especially when it comes to the things that really matter.
Absolutely. He actually advocates for a barbelled approach to risk overall,
Okay.
where you might take calculated risks with a portion of your capital, but you keep the rest safe and secure. It's about finding that balance between pursuing growth and protecting yourself from those extreme events that could derail your financial future.
So diversification is a key theme here, it seems.
It is.
And not just with your investments, but with your life in general.
Yeah, like diversifying your career, your
Yeah.
skills,
Yeah.
even your relationships.
Having multiple streams of income, different sources of support, a network of people you can rely on when things get tough. It's about having a plan B and maybe even a plan C, just in case plan A doesn't work out.
Precisely. It's all about recognizing that life is full of surprises
Yeah.
and building a foundation that can withstand those unexpected twists and turns.
Makes sense. So recognizing that change is inevitable is also key.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another crucial point that Housel makes. You as a person are going to change, and your financial plan should reflect that.
That's interesting because I think we often make financial plans based on our current goals and desires,
Yeah.
But what happens when those goals change?
Right. What if you want different things out of life as you get older?
Exactly.
Housel says we need to be prepared for those changes. He actually gives this great advice. He says, avoid assuming you'll be happy living on a tiny income,
Okay.
but also avoid feeling pressured to chase the highest possible salary.
So it's about finding that middle ground,
Yeah.
a lifestyle that you can actually sustain that allows you to pursue your passions and enjoy life while also saving for the future without burning yourself out.
You got it. It's about building flexibility into your plans because things change. And he actually highlights some really interesting research
Okay.
from a psychologist named Daniel Gilbert, who coined this term end of history illusion.
End of history illusion.
Yeah. And basically what Gilbert's research shows is that people of all ages consistently underestimate how much they will change in the future.
It's like we think we finally figured things out,
Yeah.
That we've become the person we were always meant to be and that we're going to stay that way forever.
But in reality, we are constantly evolving, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Our values, our goals, our desires, our circumstances, all of that changes over time.
So how do you plan for a future self that you can't even imagine yet?
Well, Housel suggests finding that middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
Don't trap yourself into a lifestyle that you can't sustain. But also, don't put all that pressure on yourself to chase the highest income no matter what.
So it's about finding a sustainable path
Yeah.
that allows you to grow and evolve without sacrificing your happiness or your well-being.
Exactly. It's about having a plan, but also having the wisdom to know when to deviate from that plan when things change.
Yeah, for sure. Being adaptable, being resilient, and open to embracing those unexpected things that life throws our way.
You got it. And that really leads into another crucial aspect of this book, which is all about navigating the complexities of money and our emotions. There are a lot more insights that Housel offers, and I think it's going to be really valuable to explore those further.
I agree. We've got so much more to discuss, so make sure you join us for the next part of this deep dive, where we'll delve deeper into the psychology of money with more from Morgan Housel. All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the psychology of money by Morgan Housel.
It's been quite a journey exploring all these ideas about how our emotions and experiences really influence our financial decisions.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, from the power of personal narratives to managing risk and even adapting our plans as life throws us curveballs.
Absolutely. And now I think it's time to dive into what Housel suggests for making those smarter choices with money. The kind that lead to a more fulfilling life.
Okay, so where do we even begin with that?
Well, Housel starts with something that might seem a bit unexpected. He emphasizes humility and forgiveness.
Humility and forgiveness, especially when it comes to money, I don't quite see the connection.
Well, he encourages us to actively seek out humility when things are going well, and to practice forgiveness both for ourselves and others when they're not.
Okay, so when things are going great, we should be humble, and when things are rough, we should be forgiving.
Exactly. Because, success and failure are rarely as straightforward as they seem.
I see what you mean. It's like we tend to take all the credit when things go well and blame external factors when they don't.
We often attribute our wins to our own brilliance and our losses to bad luck. But in reality, there's a lot more nuance at play.
So it's about recognizing that we're not always in control and that sometimes things just go our way and sometimes they don't. It's like being okay with not having all the answers.
Exactly. And it's also about being kind to ourselves and others when we make mistakes, because we all make mistakes, right?
Yeah, especially with money. It's so easy to get caught up in those feelings of regret or shame.
And Housel suggests that taking a more compassionate approach can be much more productive in the long run.
Okay, so instead of dwelling on our mistakes, we should try to learn from them and move forward.
Exactly. Acknowledge those missteps and figure out how to do better next time. It all ties back to one of the core messages of the book: wealth is what you don't see.
Right. It's not about those flashy cars or designer clothes.
It's about that financial security, the freedom to make choices, and the peace of mind that comes from living below your means and investing wisely.
So it's about building that solid foundation that allows you to weather the storms and focus on the things that truly matter.
You got it. And one of the keys to building that foundation is being comfortable with the idea that things will go wrong at some point.
That's not exactly a comforting thought.
I know it's not always easy to accept, but even the most successful investors out there, they experience losses and setbacks. It's part of the process.
I guess that's true. You can't win all the time.
Exactly. And Housel actually says it's more important to focus on the overall performance of your portfolio over time rather than getting hung up on those individual wins and losses.
It's like looking at the big picture instead of getting caught up in the day-to-day fluctuations.
Exactly. And remember those tail events we discussed earlier? They apply here too. Sometimes you'll have those big wins and sometimes you'll experience losses. It's all part of the game.
So the key is to be prepared for those downturns and not let them derail your overall strategy.
Right. It's about having that long-term perspective and understanding that setbacks are a natural part of the journey.
Now, something else Housel talks about that really resonated with me was this idea that money can be a powerful tool for gaining control over your time.
Oh, absolutely. He actually says that control over your time is the highest dividend money pays.
And I love that idea. It's not just about accumulating wealth for wealth's sake. It's about using it to create a life where you have the freedom to do what you want when you want with who you want.
That's exactly it. It's about having that flexibility to pursue your passions, spend time with loved ones, or just simply enjoy having unstructured time. It's about reclaiming your most valuable resource, your time.
I love that. Now, this next bit of advice from Housel is a little unexpected. He says, be nicer and less flashy. What do you make of that?
I think he's challenging this idea that status and recognition come from material possessions or these extravagant displays of wealth.
Yeah, it seems like he's saying that true respect and admiration are earned through kindness, generosity, and humility, not by how much money you have or what you buy.
I think that's a really valuable message, especially in a culture that often equates wealth with worth. It's a good reminder to focus on our character and how we treat others.
Now, something else Housel emphasizes throughout the book is the importance of saving. He actually says, save. Just save. You don't need a specific reason to save. That struck me as kind of interesting. Why save if you don't have a particular goal in mind?
Well, Housel's point is that saving isn't just about reaching some specific financial target. It's about creating options, building resilience, and being prepared for the unexpected, because life is a continuous chain of surprises, both good and bad.
So saving gives you that financial cushion to adapt to whatever life throws at you.
Exactly. Whether it's an unexpected opportunity, a sudden expense, or a major life change, having that financial buffer can make all the difference. It's about creating that sense of security and freedom, knowing you have resources to handle what comes your way.
This has been such a fascinating exploration of the psychology of money. We've learned so much about the forces that shape our financial decisions, the importance of managing risk, and even how to approach life with more humility and forgiveness.
It's been a really insightful journey. And to wrap things up, I think it's helpful to remember some of Housel's key recommendations for making better financial decisions.
Okay, so what are some of the key takeaways?
Well, he encourages us to embrace that humility and forgiveness we talked about, to focus on building wealth through saving and investing, and to remember that things won't always go according to plan.
And of course, save, 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 because you never know what surprises might be around the corner.
Absolutely. Housel leaves us with this thought-provoking quote: "A genius who loses control of their emotions can be a financial disaster. The opposite is also true. Ordinary folks with no financial education can be wealthy if they have a handful of behavioral skills that have nothing to do with formal measures of intelligence."
That's so powerful. It reminds us that financial success isn't just about being brilliant or having all this specialized knowledge. It's really about understanding that psychology of money, mastering those essential behavioral skills, and making choices that align with our values, our goals, and our vision for a fulfilling life.
So, as you continue on your own financial journey, remember that the most important lessons often come not from textbooks or spreadsheets, but from the stories we tell ourselves, the choices we make, and the experiences that shape our understanding of what truly matters.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the psychology of money. We hope you found it insightful and helpful as you navigate your own financial journey.
And remember, the journey to financial well-being is a marathon, not a sprint.
Be patient, be persistent, and most importantly, be kind to yourself along the way.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.
See you, everybody!